Hello and welcome to a new video. I know it has been quite a while, but there are reasons for that, and I might go into that a little bit later. But let's just get into the video first. This is going to be the first of a couple of videos about crannógs, and if you are Irish, you might know what a crannóg is or not, and if you're not Irish, same thing applies, just in different percentages. So a crannóg is a mostly artificial island that was created going back as early as prehistoric times, but some were created later on. And I will try to find examples of different periods. And if we look at Wikipedia, the word is Old Irish crannóg, but where that word came from, it doesn't seem to be quite clear. The crann part is easy. The crann just means tree or wood, because that's what they were mostly built of. Also stones, and in different ratios depending on what was available at the location, because they didn't import material for their regular dwellings. And the oak part, that's the tricky bit. It says here on Wikipedia, don't have to believe it, it says here that it is a suffix, a diminutive, so it's like in piglet, the let bit, or in leaflet, booklet, it just means small, and that's a diminutive ending or a diminutive suffix, and it says it's ultimately borrowed from Welsh. I don't know who came up with that, and maybe they have good reason for it, but there's no reference there, so that's a bit of a red flag. I personally think what's likely is that if you look at the northern German coast, the northwest German coast, there are a couple of islands there that end in oak as well. So we have Lange Oak, Speaker Oak, Wanger Oge, well that's the same, Minsner Oak. They don't all end in oak, but that's probably just depending on when they were named. And there were a couple near the island of Sylt as well, which I won't zoom into. But you see there are a couple of those. And I don't know the language history, the etymology of those either. But it stands to reason that it's from Old Norse, because island in Swedish and in Norwegian and all these kinds of Scandinavian languages is still derived from oak. In Swedish it's ö. I didn't look it up in Norwegian, but so there is some sort of Scandinavian, possibly, origin in the oak and crannóg, because then it would mean wood island or tree island, which makes a lot of sense, because that's basically what they look like now most times. Or it's either an island with trees growing on it or an island made out of trees or wood, which to me makes a lot of sense. You can believe me or not believe me. I don't have any proof for it or anything like that, but it kind of makes sense. It would mean that you would have mixed the Irish language and Old Norse, but there are Old Norse influences in Irish, so it could be possible. I don't know. So that's a lot of language history there that you might not be interested in at all. I just wanted to say that that's my idea where the word crannóg comes from, or the oak part anyway. So the crannóg I want to start the series with is not the most spectacular one. It is just northwest, almost just north of Kilkenny city. It's north of Kilkenny city. And the reason why I know that it's there is that there was an article in the Old Kilkenny Review. I can't remember the year exactly, but I'll put it on screen in post-edit. Someone wrote about it, and it is the only one in County Kilkenny, because there's only one lake in Kilkenny. I've checked the lake, there's no crannóg in it. But in other counties where there are loads of lakes, like Leitrim, Cavan, there are many, many more. There are hundreds of them. The Wikipedia article says there's 1,200 in Ireland, but Aidan O'Sullivan, professor of archaeology at UCD, in a lecture that I saw recently, said 2,000. Who knows? And I've just added 3 more to the database, so by finding them in Cavan, so who knows how many there are. There are loads anyway. So this one here is in the townland of Lochmerins. So there's a bit of a giveaway in the name, Loch meaning lake, that there is some water there. It's not far from the River Nore either. And there are 2 water bodies in the townland now, like proper water, not just bog. I think one is a quarry lake though, so it's definitely not prehistoric. So let's go in. Logged in there, and I click edit. And you saw that maybe that there was already something mapped with a little amphora, so it is already mapped as a historic site. The tags that I'm proposing to use, that I have been using in the past couple of weeks, are historic equals archaeological site plus site type equals crannóg. This might change. So if you want to map them, don't just blindly follow my videos. Do check against the wiki what the tag scheme is at the moment. It might change from site type to archaeological site because that would make much more sense. And I'm working on that, but I've just lost patience now in waiting for all these proposal processes. So if I turn the data layer off, you can kind of see that there's something there, roughly circular shaped. It's pretty circular shaped on Esri, and you can also see it on Bing. The imagery is not great. Bing imagery is being replaced in Ireland at the moment, starting in the north. I don't know how far south they're gonna go, but it could take weeks or months, so I don't know. This is what we have there now, and the most recent at the moment in Kilkenny is Maxar. And you don't see a lot, but you can clearly see that it looks different than its surroundings. So I'm going back to Esri and turn the data layer on again. I'll make it a little bit smaller than I had it before, because it does seem a little bit smaller on the satellite imagery. This is easier in JOSM as usual, but this will work. So first of all, I add all the tags for the crannóg site, and then we'll go into something bit more tricky. So historic equals archaeological site, you don't have to put the equals in if you use the table view. You only have to put it in the text mode, which I usually don't use because it's easier to mistype. So site type then is crannóg, which are, as I said, the basic tags you need for crannógs. If you scroll up here, you see that there is space for a name. I won't put a name in it because I'm not sure it has an official name. But the closest would probably be Lochmaron's crannóg or something, but I won't put that in. Then you have the site type, and below that historic civilization. And because I don't have any more details for that site, because as far as I know there haven't been any archaeological excavations for it, I can't put that in. Just because they generally can go back to prehistoric times doesn't mean that this one is prehistoric. Sometimes they were built as late as the early medieval period, so I'm just going to leave that empty because I don't know. There is no inscription. That is something I have to tag on GitHub. I just don't know how, because a lot of historic sites don't have an inscription. And allowed access, that is actually important, is private because it is on private land. It's also not accessible because it's in a bog. That is quite important. And then more interesting for historians is that you can add the sites and monuments reference number, and you find that on the historic environment viewer. This is the default view when you go in, and you might not be able to see exactly which one it is. Could have been that one as well. So you can go to Digital Globe and compare that, and because Digital Globe is the same satellite material as the Esri Clarity on OpenStreetMap, it's fairly easy to compare. So this is it. You can click on the node, which is actually in the center of the crannóg, which is rare enough, and copy this number here. So KK is for Kilkenny. Every county has its own. And then 14, I think, is the townland. Maybe not. I'm not sure. The barony or something. And then there's a consecutive number because there are not 63 sites in the townland of Lochmaron. So I think there are only 2 or 3. Anyway. So I copy that and then go back here and add that, and the tag is ref:/IE:/SMR for sites and monuments records. And I paste that number there. If it had a Wikipedia article, which it doesn't, I think, I could add that as well and add more information. I could add more information from the OKR article in the description, but that would go too far. So what I then have to do, because, I have to define it as an island or an islet, because I want it to stick out in the rendering. Don't map for the renderer, but it is an island in a bog, so I want to add that information, and that's easy enough. You just add place islet. You would think it's an island because in regular speech language use, you would call everything like that an island, but it is too small for OpenStreetMap to be classified as an island. And if you tried it and you're trying to save it, you will get a message saying it's too small to be an island. Please try to save as an islet. So islet again has that diminutive suffix let, that says small I, whatever. So I is actually also kind of related to the oak thing linguistically. Anyway, so that was the easy part. The tricky part is to make it stick out in the rendering as an island, because now it would just look the same as before, with this being wetland, and you would just have the amphora as before, just with all that data hidden behind, which you can't see on the map. So what you have to do there is create a relation, and we have an outer line, which can be a bog, like in this case. It is only defined as wetland, or it could be a lake. Most cases it will be a lake. So I highlight the water body, let's call it that. And what's very important now is that I delete the natural wetland. Does sound a bit illogical, but it will make sense later. Yeah, so I just delete this line by clicking on the little waste bin here. And that takes away the little border here indicating that it is a wetland. So it's just a line now with some description and a source, but it wouldn't render as anything on the map because it doesn't have like a proper key, a primary key. But we can circumvent that problem by creating a new relation, and go down to relation and click on new relation, and this one is a multi-polygon, and because I used it last, that comes up at the top. If you used a different type of relation before, it might be further down. If you don't want to read through 9, you can also type multi-polygon in the top and it'll come up. So I click on multi-polygon, and you see that already changed the border here. And then I either choose, because again, the last one I did was a wetland, but you will find it under natural features, wetland. If it was a lake, you would choose water, and this is a wetland. And then it already prompts you, and you see the border has changed to the wetland color and pattern. This is the outer role in the relation, so I click that, and then I can define it as a bog, swamp, marsh. I don't actually know exactly what it is, because I don't really know what the difference is, to be honest. It's definitely not a reed bed, so I'm just going to leave that. It's definitely not salty, because where would the salt come from? And it's also not tidal. Oh, I should click yes, no. So if it's unknown, it has a minus. If it's known, it has a tick, and if it's not salt and not tidal, it's just the tick box is empty. I found that a bit confusing in the beginning. So that is the outer line, and then we want to make the island, we want to exclude the island from that relation. So we highlight it and go down again to the list of relations, and the last one we created is usually on top, and click on that, and this is the inner, the role is inner, and you see it gets the same border and pattern like we have here. So this is going to be, this indicates the area. I'm a bit confused that this line is still visible, but we'll save it and hope for the best. Added crannóg, and I've put the hashtag before, so it automatically creates the hashtag, and the hashtag moves down here under hashtags, and the sources were Esri, National Monument Service, and Old Kilkenny Review. If I'm not sure if I've done anything wrong, I can go on the right hand side here. There's a little triangle with an eye, and that will show me if I've done anything wrong. I don't seem to have anything wrong. There's just something about a bus route that goes that way, but that doesn't really change anything. I can also click on my edits. Seems fine, so hopefully it'll work. And then we have to wait for a couple of minutes because it takes a bit longer for relations to be rendered. Okay, so that is annoying. For some reason that doesn't work. I mean, it does work, but it's just not rendered like I wanted. So the historic site is gone. We have an island now, so that's great. But the historic site isn't rendered. Maybe you can't have an historic site on an island. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But the data is there. So if you activate the map data layer and you click on that ring, you see that the information is there. It's just not rendered as a historic site. The reason why I'm surprised and flabbergasted and all that about that is that all the other crannógs that I have mapped so far, it's few over 130, I mapped the islet and the crannóg separate. The reason being that the crannógs are always circular, because that's the way people build. Well, it's as far as I know. And then, people moved away, died, whatever, over since prehistoric times, so whenever they were built, and then they weren't used for a long time, so they fell into disrepair, just like an abandoned building, #derelict Ireland. And so they fell apart, and then stuff silted up, and maybe birds carried away little branches, whatever, I don't know. Sometimes they grow in size because of all the silting up, and sometimes the water just carries away material, so it's not really a circular island anymore. But the archaeological site, or the crannóg, is always circular, so usually I map the island in the shape that I can see on satellite view, and then put a circular feature on top and map that as a crannóg, and they're always rendered correctly. But since we're not mapping for the renderer, I can't really do anything about that, and I won't go in and change what I've done there, because I think I've done everything right. It's just a pity that it doesn't look as nice as I was hoping. But that's how it is done. I know the relation part is a little bit tricky, and maybe I can go over that again in an upcoming video. But most times I think I've already mapped the island, so I can't help when I've done it in JOSM, where it is much easier. But anyway, there are a couple of videos to look forward to, and hopefully they won't be as long as this one. And I hope you will watch them to help me get more views, and hopefully at some point, maybe in the far future, get a bit of money back for all my effort. And thank you for watching. I hope you learned a few things about crannógs and about the Irish language, as if I was someone to tell you about that. And I hope to see you soon in the next video. Slán!